Jesse Chason with Lisa Blanchard as the host of Airing Addiction.
I share often my journey started on this campus. Got sober as a client here, just like you.
I really do see phenomenal change.
Always hope. I've seen situations that on the surface look impossible, become possible.
Doing this podcast is to share those recovery stories, be honest about what the challenges are and have some real conversations, but kind of share that out on the airwaves. Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of Airing Addiction. I'm Lisa Blanchard. We're really excited to have you here. If you're watching or listening live or close to it, we are in April. If you're in the Northeast, it's a little bit chilly again, but we promise spring is returning and it will get warm again. I'm really excited for our guest today. I'm going to let Jesse go ahead and introduce her, but I've been looking forward to this episode. Jesse.
Awesome. Thanks, Lisa. Good morning. Welcome, everybody. Love doing this. And today we have a wonderful guest. I'm going to read just a little bit of her bio and then turn it over to introduce her. Malika Parham-Hill is a woman in long-term recovery with many years of sustained healing and lived experience, bringing over 24 years of professional experience in the substance use and recovery field. Her professional background includes specialized training and experience in co-occurring substance use and mental health disorders, sex trafficking and sexual exploitation, homelessness, and work with marginalized populations. She is the founder and CEO of Trauma Healing Empowering Inc., a trauma-informed 501c3 nonprofit created to provide survivors with safe and empowering spaces to heal, grow, and break cycles. She is also the facilitator of the trauma-informed women's support group, Little Girl Grows Up. And more importantly, well, all that's important, but she also is a colleague and a friend serving as the recovery coach at Spectrum Health System's Southbridge Outpatient program, serving a critical bridge between outpatient clinical services and peer-based recovery support. Malika, that's a whole lot. I would love to hear wherever you would like to go with that. How did you get here? Welcome. So glad to have you here today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It is an honor and a privilege to be here, especially in the likes of the two of you. So thank you for having me. So I have had that is a lot there, right? And so it's I'm grateful that I had to go through the process to get to where I am, because sometimes I just really believe that, I love God, right? And so I believe that sometimes God picks the strongest ones to be the martyrs, so other people can get have the testimony, so other people could live. So I truly believe that. So my little roster there started a long time ago, right? I'm originally from Boston, Massachusetts, and I grew up in a very difficult, home. I grew up under my grandmother. My grandmother raised me, and I grew up, for a matter of fact, thinking that my mother was my sister for a long time. So right there was a lot of barriers for me to live completely in reality, but living in an illusion that, it was one way when it was really something else, But over the years, I got to know my mother a little bit better, and we began a bond, and we both have a lot of issues that we had to get some closure on. What my life turned into, I could always say, well, I grew up with this background and that background, but the reality is that my mother had a story too, and I had to get to that place to be able to understand that, and that's why we ended up having closure, and she's my best person in the world, So, yeah. However, growing up, because of those situations that had happened to me, I grew up feeling like I didn't belong, I wasn't good enough. Why didn't she take me? Why did she leave me? All that kind of stuff, So I grew up trying to fit in somewhere, and as a teenager, I started hanging around bad, influences. And because I felt like, they were people that cared about me, I did what they did, and my self-esteem was so bad as a young girl that I literally would sacrifice myself to feel loved by someone else, and so that's where a lot of coercion came in for me. Before I even started using any substances, I was already caught up in coercion, because I just wanted to feel some type of connection to someone, and the world is a nasty place, but, at the time, it was what it was. And I did what I had to do to, feel like I had a place in the world, so, it was a struggle from the beginning, but once I found that there was something that relieved me and helped me to escape all the stuff that was going on internally, that's what I depended on. I have the situation with the coercion. Yes, that happened, but it even got even worse for me, because I was out in the world after all of that, trying to find a place, where I fit in. So I got in the hands of the wrong people and was exploited in a lot of ways, but I feel that, like, the most important thing that I needed to, like, focus on was the trauma that I had gone through in my life, because the trauma is what held me down with feeling like I wasn't worthy of nothing, and also the trauma that I experienced created a big barrier, where it was really difficult for me to even gain any type of meaningful relationships with people. I've always escaped by using substances because of all the mental health issues that I had and all the trauma that I experienced. And back when I was growing up, it was like trauma and mental health. What's that? We did not, our culture was like, there's nothing wrong with you. You're just a little bit crazy. You just need to pray, stuff like that. I grew up thinking that, like, there was like, it was this saying that we used to say all the time. I don't know karate, but I know crazy. And like, that was that was our form of, like, okay, she's a little bit crazy, but that's it. There's nothing wrong with her. So my life was just always about, I don't know karate, but I know crazy, And so that's how I went through the world each and every day, just acting out of my trauma. I got clean a couple of times, right? And I remember it was like I always had to have a reason or excuse. I tried to figure out ways to do it without getting into the consequences, never worked, right? Never worked. I was always trying to do, like, the marijuana maintenance program. I only do drugs on the weekends, that kind of thing. But the drugs had me by the tail, and even the kids that I had along the way, like, I just was not suitable to really raise my kids. And I'm so grateful for my mother, and family members that was there for me. I was married at an early age. And at the age of 24, and I lasted that marriage for 24 years. And I don't know how, because I used to say to him, if I was you, I would have been left me, but I ended up, the man he stuck it in with me all that time. And even to this day, how about that? And it's like 30 years plus, so a lot of different turns and twists happened to me along the way, but when I found recovery, though, I found this person on the inside that was able to excel, but I just didn't know how to tame that person that was still in there trying to fight her way out, and that's why I started the group Little Girl Grows Up, because I find that, like, in order for me to really, really be in a place of surrender around all that stuff, not just drugs, not just, how about against me, right? I had to really, really buckle down on healing from some stuff, trauma and substance use created this part in me where I couldn't even have a healthy relationship with, my husband, because I was so angry, and any little thing he did that mirrored anything that I experienced as a child. I was, this thing came out of me, this person, this other personality, came out of me and wouldn't allow me to be love or to give love. Right. And it was very, very discouraging, especially when you're trying to have a family, right? I just struggled with that piece with being able to have relationships with my husband or men in general. I went through so much with men. I ended up in places like I was left for dead in a town I never been in. I had guns put to my head and all kinds of things. I had a really, really difficult, time trying to survive out there. And that's a key word that I want to hit on is survival, right? I got tired of living my life in survival mode, right? When I got my life together, I had to learn how to stop surviving and start living. I had to learn how to heal from all that anger I had in me, that built up and pinned up anger, that hurt that I had from me trying to love people and them not loving me back. Then it became the love that I gave was not condition. It was not it was conditional. Like the only way that I'm going to love you is that you have to do this, do that, do this. And so my self-esteem was so low that when someone was trying to love me, it was like I couldn't accept it because I always felt like, I wasn't good enough or worthy enough for it anyway. So you can just do this to me and I'll be okay, because then I know that you're being your real self. It was it was just I couldn't stand living in my body, feeling the way I was feeling, trying to get clean or stay clean, or just being this person that was walking around as if, I wasn't my true self. And at the time, I didn't even know what my true self was or what I was going to be. But over time, when I started to do some work, some deep, deep internal work on myself, and I found that it was the trauma that I needed to address, then and only then was I able to connect the dots and say, I need to heal from all that pain that I had. And I used to have to look at people and say, you know what, it wasn't you. You didn't do anything to me. You just appear to be like that person that did. So I'm going to refrain from trying to hurt you before you hurt me, And so these are the little things that I had, the takeaways that I had to learn how to do each and every day. I didn't no longer wanted to be that person that was in survival mode, and from the beginning of my recovery, many, many years ago, I felt that I wanted to be able to still love people, and I still wanted to have love. So instead of me looking for the right man, I started to look for the right me, right? And so I started to love on women in a way that I'm showing you that you do not have to go through what I went through, because I already did it for you. And how about where you are right now? Let's try to find a way for you to get to the other side, because it's real easy to get clean, but how hard is it for you to stay clean is the problem. We're always looking at the using, but not looking at the stopping, And so, it can go the other way around too, but it's like we always look at the wrong things when we first come around, and I like to sometimes do analogies to kind of make it real simple for some people, I would say things to these women like, have you ever watched a action movie, right? Like, let's say Rambo, right? Rambo was going through all kinds of stuff, right? Like even the diehard guy, he's doing all kinds of stuff. He's going through all of this madness and craziness. But at the end of all of that, he was the hero. He won. So I have to say to these women, like, you're going to have to be the one that's going to go through whatever you got to go through, because the challenges that we deal with is what makes us the strongest. And sometimes not knowing the next thing that's going to happen is a difficult experience. But how would you get to the miracle or the blessing without the work or the pain at first, right? So like I had to do these little things to kind of help people understand that what we go through is not going to be what it is for the rest of our lives, but we have to do a lot of internal work. We have to start going inside and figuring some things out, and getting ready to put the puzzle together, because that's what it is. We have to put the puzzle together, and we can do that. And I'm going to be right here with you to help you through that. I learned that taking care of me, giving myself self-love, self-care, giving myself grace, sometimes that was the key thing that was going to help me to move forward and be my best self. I'm even learning so much today now, like I've always grew up in survival mode. And sometimes when people might hurt my feelings in a particular way or whatever, I used to my survival would be like, come back, well, let me defend myself, and now I'm learning that sometimes just being quiet is very powerful. It is very powerful, but that took a lot of work to be able to do it. And I'm not always there with it. Right. But it's a work in progress. And that's what we are. We're all work in progress. And I'm just so grateful to be able to experience the things that I'm experiencing, because I'm learning so much, about myself. I always feel like with other women that I work with, I can't go in there helping somebody else clean their backyard, and my backyard's dirty. I'm just one of them people like that. Like I can't help somebody with something that I haven't even did the work on, and so I'm real adamant about like doing the work, and trauma is the thing that created me to be the person that I was, but the healing created the person that I am today, right? And the person that I am today is just a person that wants to be the testimonial for other people, to show people that you don't have to be like that forever. You don't have to survive the way you survived all your life. You don't have to turn your assets or your liabilities into assets, and your assets into liability. We had to do our liability. We called our street smarts and everything our assets. And then we get our life together and we still hold on to them assets and think that they're assets, and they're not, they're liabilities, So how can we get from this point to that point and turn it around? Right. But whatever we do, when we turn it around, we got to do it every day. We got to keep pushing every day, and our biggest problem that we have is this, our mind. Our mind is our biggest enemy. And like, sometimes I have to literally erase some of the stuff that my mind is telling me, and I have to literally replace it with something else. My mind could be the death of me, right? Because like I said, I'm always looking at myself like I'm not good enough, not worthy, knowing that I am. But my mind will tell me these things and I'll begin to believe it, and that's not true. My mind, the stuff that I'm my worst enemy. I do the most harm to myself than anybody could do to me. And for a matter of fact, if anybody ever did some of the stuff to me that I do to myself, there's going to be a problem, right? We're just not going to allow people to do anything to us like that. But why do I do it to myself? Why do I do that to myself? I don't you know, and that's the thing, you know, I gotta heal from that stuff. You know, my mind, you know, tells me, I'm telling you, I make movies. I literally make movies. When I get in my head, I will make a whole movie up and be ready to watch it with popcorn and everything. And like, wow, you know. So I gotta reel it back and like, you know what? Your mind is talking to you and it's not the truth. You gotta change the illusion into reality, you know, and that's where I'm at. My life has been a wonderful life. You know, I'm a grandmother. You know, I have 6 grown children. And I remember saying, I can't wait till they get grown, you know. But I was able to raise my children at some point because I decided to make a turn. You know, I decided to go right when I could have went left. We always got a choice, you know, and the choices we make is going to be the destiny that we have, you know. So, yeah, I'm a blessed individual. God, I just love God and like, you know, God has been my motivation and you know, my peace, my love, my joy, you know, and if it wasn't for God, I wouldn't be the woman that I am today, but I wouldn't have accomplished anything that I have accomplished all my life. You know, going through all that bad stuff I went through, you know, being able to, God taught me how to stop surviving and start living and start healing, you know. And I love the fact that I went through all that hardship for somebody else, you know. And the people that I serve, you know, it's like if they could just see sometimes that the world is not just this little box we live in, right? We don't live in a little box. There is something outside of that box that I wanted to experience. And let me tell you, I have experienced a lot of wonderful things that I never thought I'd ever do, you know, and I love to show other people, you know, what that looks like, you know.
I'd love to get to how you do that, but before we do, I'd love to just reflect a little bit on your story. It's an honor for you to share it, and one of the things, several things that struck me, but I really appreciate, you know, being a therapist. I really appreciate the focus on trauma, and I have the understanding of trauma and what that does to the brain and the double impact of trauma and substance use act on the same parts of the brain. Like it really makes it very challenging. But you have the opportunity to share from your place of that lived expertise. And that's what I think is really powerful. And that's what I think peer roles really bring, right? Like I can do all of the therapy things and that's great. And therapy is wonderful. And that's part of healing, but being able to show that that change, you know, by your own experience. And I loved your analogy, honestly, of the like the Die Hard or Rambo movies, right? like the protagonist like going through all of this stuff, and it's like usually like a big like strong guy, and that takes that like perception of him being the hero at the end and shifting that to a woman who's been through lots of trauma becoming the hero at the end of the story, because honestly that's what you're doing, Malika. That's you, right? Like you're the hero at the end of your story. And it always strikes me, you know, one of my favorite sayings, I'm sure I've said it on here several times, is that you know, hurt people, but healed people heal people. And that's really the place from which you are supporting others. It's really, really quite amazing.
Thank you. I love doing what I do. I really do. I love it.
And to just echo Lisa's sentiments, there was so much there to reflect on. Thank you for sharing your story. I had the privilege of knowing some of that from working with you down in Southbridge. And, you know, as you were sharing at the beginning, even before substances were the primary issue and the way you grew up with the, you know, thinking your mother was your sister and the reality that you were shown that was different from the actual reality. And, you know, you had said that you were searching for connection.
Yes.
And just feeling some type of connection to someone. And I thought of, as we know, the opposite of addiction is connection, and how you've taken that from a young age, that search to feel connected to somebody, and your place that was God given. I heard you say that, you now have the opportunity to connect with these women, to show them that they don't have to go through some of the things that you went through. And I loved a lot of what you said there, and a lot of sayings I wrote down, but the one that really stuck out was, trauma created the person I was, and healing created the person I am today. And you are just the textbook example of what, like my co-host said, healing people heal people, and that's what you're doing. So I'd love to hear more about your work, in all that you do, from Trauma Healing Empowering Incorporated, Little Girl Grows Up, what a recovery coach is. Certainly we've had other recovery coaches on here, and we talk about that often, but maybe for the person that is just tuning in today and heard you say that, and it's like, what's that? What's a recovery coach, Malika?
Well, it's funny because recovery coaches have been around long before the word was called recovery coaching, right? And so it was so easy for me to get into that role, which I'll explain what it is in a moment, because of it's the same work that I've done in the past, right? Before recovery coaching was the word was used. And what recovery coaching is for me is I'll say some words that kind of stick out for me with it. Support, advocacy. It can kind of overlap a little bit with, it's not this, but it can overlap with sponsorship or with mentorship. However, it is a role that I play each and every day, where I bond with people who are in the same situations that I used to be in, and I'm helping them to get to a place of a better quality of life, and whatever that may mean for them. I'm on the road with you. We have a lot of different pathways, and my pathway may not be the same as my recovery's pathway. I grew up on 12 steps programs, right? But my recoveries might feel like they want to go to church. They might feel like they want to try smart recovery. They might want to try different things. And so my job is to support them where they're at, and to be able to help them to navigate in that space that they're the pathway that they're trying to set forth on. I do a lot of work at the Southbridge Outpatient. I do a lot of work with our people here, our community, which are people on MATs. And actually, we have some that are just doing counseling. And a lot of them struggle with getting on SSI or renewing their SSI, or they received a letter saying they're getting cut off the SSI. They may need support with food stamps. They may need support with housing. They may need support with trying to save their housing. Whatever the situation may be, I help them with that. We get in the office, and we pull the laptops out, and we start doing applications. We start pulling up things and researching. We do a lot of that. And so my thing with that is that I'm trying to teach self-advocacy too. So I'm going to be right here while I'm going to show you what to do. Now, this is how we do it, and you take it from here. But I got you. I'm right here with you through it all. We have some women that may need to go to the food bank to pick up food because they don't have any groceries or stamps to get food or whatever. So I'm blessed to be able to have the opportunity now to drive our people to some of these appointments. Maybe they have appointments where they have to get a PET scan or a CAT scan. One person I know had that situation, and even go with them to the doctor to support them. We have court, just go there to support them. a variety of different things that I do. I think that there is something new that always comes up, and I'll say, I know how to do that. Because I've been doing this stuff for a very long time, So, but we create bonds with some of our people here, and the thing too is that, like, I live in a town, right? I live in Southbridge, and so we might see each other in the grocery store. We might see each other in at a meeting, in the community, and it's very refreshing to them as well as to me that I still know who they are. And I'm not looking at you and be like, oh, I don't know you. You know what I'm saying? That was work. This is personal. I don't do that. I'm the same all the time. I don't change, and a lot of people appreciate that about me.
Yeah, it's that person to person. And I love the way you described all the lots of coaching activities, because a lot of those things are, clinically, we've often talked about kind of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is like having the basics met at the bottom of the triangle, right? And that creates safety. And you can't do the higher level work that, say, you have done to work on your trauma until you have some basic needs met, right? So maybe that's your social security that needs to do that.
Yes.
You have a safe place to live. You have safe people around you. So you've got that kind of, basic needs met, psychological safety, and then you can start to work on that healing. And sometimes that's what coaching is saying. And I love how you describe it. We've talked about that difference between coaching and case management on this podcast before. And Michael Arillo has always, educated me. And he said to me once, the difference between case management and coaching is case managers are going to do it for you. Coaches are going to do it alongside you.
Yes.
Right. So you're just sharing your knowledge based on the work that you've done, based on your lived expertise, and helping them walk the path themselves so that they can do it on their own. And I just appreciate the way that you describe that, and also appreciate the multiple pathways, which is inherent to recovery coaching. We've talked about, what do you think the impact has been in adding? So, for those who, may not have heard me say this in other episodes or may not know this, we at Spectrum have a long history of involving folks with lived expertise. We have, 5 peer recovery support centers, including one in Southbridge that I know, Malika, you do quite a bit of work at, which is our newest. But we really are starting to formalize those roles that are now, it's been around for a long time, as you described. Before it was called recovery coaching, it was things that we did. And now it's actually a Medicaid billable service in an outpatient center. So we've been adding to our outpatient and our opioid treatment programs this role. And so you're one of our very first recovery coaches, and we're really proud to say that. What do you think that impact of adding a recovery coach to the OTP has been?
So it is, we had our team building yesterday, and one of the questions that we had to answer was, what keeps you here at Spectrum, or what is it that'll make you stay at Spectrum? And one of the things I said was the integration of doing different, like adding things. Like Spectrum has always been open with adding the new things that's going on, and so this role being the first one it's an experience, but it's something that has to happen, right? Like the outpatient is a clinical piece of the work, and recovery coaching is non-clinical. So it has to be something that's integrated together, and it has to be a position that has to be filled, right? In the future, for people to come behind me. So somebody has to be the ones to go through the hard part, the grinding, and I don't know if I'm gonna make it. Oh, can I still do this? Or, how about this? Am I gonna get fired? Just the hard parts, right? Someone has to do it, right? And so again, I'm that I think God has said, well, this is another thing, a struggle you got to go through, but you're going to get through it, and so the integration has been amazing, and it's so worth it. And I just love to hear the participants here or the community here talk about how grateful they are that a recovery coach was added, and so showing them the other side over at the recovery center, the peer recovery center, they begin to go to groups over there. They go over there, play pool. They go over there and, just, interact with people that are trying to do the same thing they're doing, and they're like, wow, this is not bad. I've been stuck in the house. I don't go nowhere. I don't do anything. And this is not bad, And so it's just a blessing to watch all of this stuff transpire, the transformation of some of the people I have started with, and they're like blooming, like they're doing really well. And another thing that we have to be as recovery coaches understandable too is some of them are not always going to stay clean. Some of them might, relapse or fall off. They might, be dipping and dabbing it wherever they are. We have to love them no matter where they are. You know what I'm saying? We have to support them regardless, and that is a big key thing, and sometimes it's difficult for some people to wrap their head around that, but it is what it is, right? And so we got to make due diligence and do the best we can with what the person is dealing with. They're not always going to do what we think they should do. They're not always going to say what we think they should say. And you know what? Like, who am I for them to do what I want them to do? That part is between them and God, like I'm not that powerful, but what I can do is try to help you as much as I can with where you're at, And that's what I love about the outpatient to the peer recovery services.
Yeah, because you described that really well, even in describing the coaching service. And I love the way that, that you said it, is that you're bonding with people, that are in similar situations that you have been in before to get to a better quality of life, whatever that means for them.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that doesn't necessarily mean what you want, Malika, what I want, right? What I think everybody should have in our programs and what it should look like and what their lives should look like. It's whatever that means for them. And maybe at this point in time, it's reduction in use, or it's harm reduction, or it's safety, and it's starting to build some groundwork that they are more comfortable in their day to day. And that's okay, right?
Yes.
And wherever they are on their path is where we're going to meet them. And that's something that I think even our clinical teams, I've been, part of revising our outpatient clinical plan, which really led us to adding coaching to this work of really being much more flexible, right? Much more individualized, like much more putting the person at the center instead of what we want for them. What do they want for themselves? And how can we just be part of that, right? Conversation.
Yes. Absolutely. I didn't get it the first time. It was, it sometimes we just have to go through what we have to go through. And like, it's just a blessing to have somebody to go through it. They have us to latch on to help them get through it and see their way through it. It's like coming out of the forest, with all the bushes, you're like, let me get in there, so yeah.
You have some great analogies, Malika. I love your analogies. And I was reminded as you were sharing about, I believe it was the recovery coach theme last year in Southbridge. I believe I got a bracelet that said you grow through what you go through.
Mm-hmm.
And, I love how you put that last piece there that, people that you're working with, people that we all interact with here at Spectrum, they have self-will. They have agency. They have they're the expert on themselves. So, that difference between coaching and case management, where you're alongside with them, you're still giving them the skills to advocate for themselves, and it's up to them to do with as they wish. Right.
Yeah.
And in your introduction, you had talked about being the critical bridge in between the OTP and the peer recovery center, and did a really wonderful job of explaining, for somebody that maybe is isolating, is home all the time, and doesn't even know what a peer recovery center is. That there's this great option, and here you are, watching people bloom and really coming in their own. And I remember
Love
my
it.
first time walking into the Recovery Connection in Marlboro and being just blown away, like, wow, places like this exist. This is I never knew, right? And then
Mhm.
going to the groups and having the fellowship and there was ping pong. It wasn't pool, but just having the ability to just learn a different way of life, right? And
Yeah.
that's kind of the theme that one of the many themes I heard from you today is that you've had to learn a different way of life from that survival mode to living life.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, the first peer recovery center, we used to have it over at the Denholm building in Worcester.
I remember.
Yep, yep. And I remember, and at that time, it was just like a center. It was a center. It wasn't like not a peer recovery center. It was just a center. And so we went over to Pleasant Street, and I remember us putting that name together, Everyday Miracles. I remember, just putting all these different things in place, So I had the opportunity and the blessing to see the peer recovery services really start taking off, And so it is vital because that center saved my life. I was at the Recovery Everyday Miracles and before when we was at Denholm Buildings every day. Okay, every day I was in there and I learned so much. I learned how to put my resume together. I learned how to facilitate groups. I learned how to stay in a group without getting up and doing a coffee pot shuffle. No, I'm just kidding.
To sit there
I
and be
learned how to
present for
sit
the group.
still.
Yeah.
Yeah, and and it's just amazing to see how many we have and how Spectrum put all of those recovery centers in place for people in these towns that vitally need it. I will always have a great respect for Spectrum. And I knew this many, many years ago. I used to work for Spectrum many years ago, and I would always give them the utmost respect because they made a lot of stuff happen because they listened to the community. They found out what was needed and they did it. And so again, with recovery coaching, they heard what was needed and they did it. And so I'm grateful to be a part of that. This is amazing work that we're doing, right? And the participants love the fact that they have someone that they can just really talk to, right? Because they tell us some stuff, right, that they don't tell everybody, and they just feel so good to be able to be free and say what they need to say and not feel no kind of way about it, and I look at them and be like, you know what? Me too. How about that? Me too. All right.
And
It's all right.
I learned something about you today, Malika. I did not know that you were involved with EDM way back when it started.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
of course, you're the perfect person to be one of the first recovery coaches here and with Southbridge Peer Recovery Center. It's a beautiful first full circle moment right there.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be a part of it. This is big stuff. I'm telling you, this recovery coaching and all this stuff we're doing is gonna take off. It's gonna even go further. It is. And we're in it here and we're doing it. And yeah, we're gonna represent
Yeah.
Spectrum because
And,
this is where it all started, right here in Southbridge for me, Lincoln Street for Eric and Ricardo.
Yeah.
So yeah.
it's
Yeah,
beautiful.
we got to be the martyrs.
Westboro for me. I've shared many times on this podcast about my own journey, and I don't know if I ever shared this that the actual building. A lot of people listening probably know this, but the residential program, it was a really old building, so it's since been torn down and replaced with a beautiful admission center in Westboro, and a OTP. But when they were in that process, they were getting rid of lots of stuff. So I had the opportunity to maintenance at the time was very gracious to get me a desk from that building. And I have that desk in my home, and that's the desk that I did my grad school program sitting at. And I will always keep that desk. So that's
Isn't
my
that
little
something?
piece of the beginning, where just very grateful for Spectrum as well, and yeah, very grateful.
Yeah. Spectrum is hot as that word hot. Spectrum is doing it. Yeah. I'm just like I'm grateful. And I remember not about a year ago, a little bit over a year ago, I was like, I want to go to Spectrum. I want to go back to Spectrum. And I think I reached out to you, Lisa. I
Yes.
sent over my resume and things happened one after the other with Amy and it just happened. And I just know that because I prayed on it, I pray and I wait and see what happens, and it just was like everything else was resistance to it, but not Spectrum.
Yeah. And it's
I
not that it's
always,
easy, right? We're learning.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
think, and that's what we need you for. That's what we have, we have Athena for in a, executive director role over peer recovery supports, because it's that important to us, to really make sure that throughout all of our services, that voice of lived experience and lived expertise is part of the conversation, and recovery coaching is just a natural evolution of that. But really, I see our job is to build the systems and create the space to let you all do what you do, right? And learn from it, right? And we can learn from each other. We did a really great training, with our staff on really looking at kind of that difference between clinical and peer, and having a multi-sided conversation, and led by peers, trained by peers. Like, I only popped in and said something about every fifth slide for like a sentence or two, right? Because then it's my job to step back, right, and let the work happen. And we're just really grateful to you and to the other coaches and to Athena for really helping us move this forward, and of course to our operational folks who are really doing a lot of work to create the space for this, because we want to see what can we do differently, how can we shift our services to reach people in a different way, right? What we have always done is not necessarily getting us the result that we want, and so how do we help people differently? And this, I think, has been the missing piece. And we had to wait for the systems to be ready for it, right? For the state to pass legislation that makes it easy. And there's still barriers, right? We still have to do kind of these notice of admissions things and things that really are just administrative barriers. But you've been a real leader in navigating that, right? So your understanding of systems and admin really helps us navigate that process. It's not easy, right? It's not just put a coach in there and let them do their work. Well, we have to, make sure our teams are ready, make sure our patients and our clients are aware. We have to kind of, figure out, how do we navigate these different roles? How do we take care of each other? How do we support each other? And that takes work, right? To do that well. We don't want to just put people in roles and then let them be and sink or swim. We really want to do this thoughtfully and carefully. And I'm just really grateful to you for being part of that process of being thoughtful and careful.
I think that Athena, she played a major role in the peer work and like putting us in place. I have to say, like, Athena has been doing this for a long time, and she's like the bridge too, with the non-clinical. She's the bridge, and she's been the one that has been a big inspiration in a lot of this, right? And so I always, thank her for just her being the woman that she is, and how much she cares. She's an ally, and I'm glad you mentioned her, because that even with the first Everyday Miracles, that was Athena, and so she's been a wonderful bridge, from clinical to non-clinical. So I'm glad I'm glad that you put her in place where she is, because that was you that did that. So yes. Thank you for her. Yep. And the director that we have here at the outpatient, Amy, she's great as well. We over the past year we have learned a lot from each other, and we'll continue to do that. So I have a great deal of respect for her as well. And so I would say thank you to her for even like putting up with me. Yeah, so it's been a pleasure. It really has. Yeah.
One of my goals
It's
is to
wonderful.
obviously add recovery coaches in all of our OTPs, and then even start to add this as a support for bridging folks from inpatient to outpatient, really kind of throughout our continuum, over time, to really grow this. And then to really show, there's some really wonderful research. We've had Dr. Corey Vilsant on the podcast from Recovery Research Institute, really talking about the evidence for peer support, right? And what that looks like. And so, I think that we have a unique opportunity to be part of adding to that evidence. Like, what does it look like for somebody who is engaged with a recovery coach, and how long do they stay in care, right? Because we know that there's not a lot of metrics we can all agree on, right? Which makes sense based on our conversation about it's such an individual path. There's not like one right way to do it. And it's not like, if you have, negative talk screens, you're doing great, but it's too big, right, to even have kind of an outcome measure. And so we're looking at things like quality of life. And we believe one thing we can all agree on in substance use treatment is that the longer somebody stays connected, the better that they do, right? And that could be connected at a peer recovery center. It could be connected to a coach. It could be, staying connected to kind of life-saving medications, whatever that might be. And I'd love for us to start to contribute to the evidence of showing how coaching actually improves those outcomes over time. So more to come. I hope someday we have you and others back on the podcast to talk about our results.
Yes, I would love that. Yes.
The opposite of addiction is connection.
Yeah.
Right? Making multiple connection is it was a few episodes ago we talked about, we always talk about multiple pathways, but really the infinite number of pathways, because there's no cookie cutter, one size fits all recovery, and it's so individual, and there is something that works for everyone, and that's where we get the hope from, and that's a unofficial theme of Airing Addiction, and certainly you have given us so much hope today with your story. Thank you so much for sharing, and all that you do, and the many different hats that you wear, sharing the hope that healing is possible.
Thank you. I'm glad to be a part of the podcast for today, and I hope that maybe, like you were saying, Lisa, when we get that evidence, we have evidence though, right? Yeah. But when we start like really, really pushing it, and everything's all in place, integrated, because I know that the position has to be formed. It has to be a position, and it has to have the policies and the guidelines. So when that is all said and done, and we start having recovery coaches all over the place, yes, then here's all the evidence.
Absolutely. I look forward to it. I know that we'll see it. And I just look forward to showing the rest of the world, so that it becomes kind of just part of how we support people, right? That it's not just, we're doing this pilot, or, this is a grant funded role, like that. There's some sustainability that's permanent for embedding these lived expertise roles and peer support roles into the work that we do. Because I say all the time, like, I'm a therapist, I can help you and bring you so far, but I can't do that. And really, sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes you really need to start with someone with that lived experience till you have that kind of trusted messenger connection. And then you're actually more ready for things like therapy, right? Like, it's sometimes I think it's finding the right person to support at the right time. And that's one of the things that we're really excited to learn from.
Yeah. Well, you and Jesse have been great, because I have been watching a few of your podcasts over the time. And I was telling Jesse earlier, I said, One day I want to be on there.
Yeah.
And
Today
so,
is today.
yes. And I'm just grateful for that, And Jesse, I miss you too.
I miss you as well. We'll have to
Yeah.
set a time for me to come down to Southbridge. And yeah, I love my time in Southbridge.
Yeah.
And I love my time today here. And I'm sure everyone that's listening and going to listen will love it as well. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story with us today.
Thank you for having me.
And thanks everyone who's listening or watching. Jesse and I will be back. I think we've already got our May episode planned. I'm excited for that one as well. And we're trying to be real organized about having all of our summer episodes, and that'll lead us straight into Recovery Month, which is
It'll
our
be here
favorite
before we know it.
month.
Ooh.
Oh, yes. So thank you everyone for listening. Thank you everyone for liking and subscribing and all that fun stuff so that we can get out to the people that need and want to hear this message. And we'll see you next month.
Okay,
Thanks
thank you.
everyone. Thank you, Malika.